re-enchantment is the way forward. There's a lot happening in the world, and humans doing some not very nice things to each other, to our planet. I know that everyone here shares a very similar set of values. We are for kindness, we are for decency, and so it can feel a little disenchanting to look around us at the moment. And so the reading, the offering, is an invitation to re-enchantment. And I invite you to find that this month, wherever you do, to remember that there is meaning, there is magic, and to allow that to empower you. And one of the ways that I'm going to be re-enchanting in the coming month, the coming times, is I'm going to go and spend some time on the shores of Loch Ness. So I'm very, very excited about that. I don't know Loch Ness well. I've been there once when I was knee-high to a grasshopper, as they say. So it's going to be a new exploration of enchantment, and I wanted to bring the energy of it in because it feels quite magical. I wanted to bring that magical feeling into our reading, and so our spread for today is based around that. I don't know how easily you get excited about geology. I find that it can be quite exciting. And one of the things that I discovered is that Loch Ness, it runs in a line. For those of you who don't know the map, I considered drawing it on my whiteboard, but there are skills I have and skills I don't have, and it wouldn't enlighten you anymore as to the shape of Loch Ness or of Scotland. But it runs in a line, sort of diagonally down across Scotland. And so I was looking into the geology and the history of it. And so this diagonal line, you've got sort of Inverness at the sea, and you've got Loch Ness coming down. That goes all the way across to Fort William and the Highlands. Ben Nevis is the highest peak in Britain, and it goes all the way down there. And what I discovered is that years and years ago, like eons ago, the two sides of this line were actually different continents. So years and years and years, eons, I'm going to say eons because years just doesn't even cut it. Eons ago, the continents were not where they are now. So long ago that it's kind of beyond our comprehension. And the continents are still moving and always have moved. And so they moved together. And this line down Scotland is one of the places where two continents that were not, that were separate, eventually over eons and eons came together and formed this landmass. So really, really geologically exciting in terms of the energy coming together. And so our first two positions for the spread for today, for these coming weeks, are about, what two things are coming together at the moment to form something new. And then overarching that is this concept of eons, of something so big that we cannot observe it happening. And we experience it happening without knowing that we're experiencing it happening. So this third position is about, what big thing is happening right now that's actually so big that we're not even really aware of it. We might be able to kind of trace it back once it's happened, but it's happening right now. So these are our first three positions. And then I have a position for Loch Ness itself. And bodies of water are amazing. Loch Ness is really deep. I believe it's the deepest lake in Scotland. It's mysterious. It's this huge body of water. And so it has, we interact with it on the surface. We try to see into the depths. And it's a body of water, so it's contained in the land around it. Water's contained in in the shape of what's in it. So kind of bringing all those ideas together. And there's a lovely mindfulness meditation you can do, the lake meditation, where you consider yourself to be a lake. There are other ones you can do, mountain meditation, but the lake one's really nice. So kind of bringing these ideas together for this position and the spread. In this reading, it's really about what contains us at this time, and what in containing us shapes us, and what are we containing as well, all of those things. And then another position here, and she had to be in here, and it's Nessie. And I'm going to say Nessie and not the Loch Ness monster, because I don't believe that Nessie is a monster. I do believe that Nessie is real, and I don't pretend to be able to define that reality. So I'm going to see her and refer to her at the moment as a spirit of place. So the sort of spiritual aspect of the place, the guardian of the place. So this is our invitation, really, to interact with spirits of place in these coming weeks, to remember that all places are sacred, and all places have a spirit. And so the way that we are in a place will change depending on how we interact with that spirit of place, whether we acknowledge it or not, whether we seek it, whether we honor it, how we go about that. So we have Nessie, the spirit of place, and then finally at the bottom of the reading we have the act of pilgrimage and of offering. So anytime I go to a special place like this, I consider it a kind of pilgrimage, and I will be taking offerings. And what I usually offer when I make pilgrimage to a place is stories. So some of you have heard me tell stories. I have a handful of stories that I really love, that I've done readings around before. The almond blossom one from the Algarve's one of them. The Selkie woman story is another. So the offerings that I'll be taking will be stories. And so this position in the spread is about how, what magical acts can we do in the coming times that allow for that re-enchantment, that allow for that that reconnection with magic, that do honour and recognise the world that we live in as a sacred world. So that is our spread for today, and we'll go ahead and pull some cards. So the deck I'm using today is not actually a tarot deck, it's an oracle deck. I usually read with tarot, but this is an oracle deck I've had for a couple of years. Haven't read with for a while, and it's the Oracle Deck of Bridges by Janine Worthington. And it's a lovely little oracle deck. It has some really creative energies and images in, and it just felt like the right one to be with us today. So I'm going to invite you to take a deep breath and just ask to receive what you need. And you might invite in the spirit of enchantment, re-enchantment. And you might even, if you wish to connect, invite in the spirit of place wherever you are now. So that might be a spirit of a wider place, or the spirit of your home, wherever you are. Just asking to receive what you need. So our first two cards then are what two energies are coming together in the coming weeks to form something new. And this is quite interesting, so I shall hold these up one by one actually, and then together. So we have order, and this card shows it's a fireplace or a hearth. The top half of the card has a fireplace. There's a fire burning in it. There are some sort of statues or votive decorations around it. And then in the bottom half of the card, there is a reflection. So it's very symmetrical. And there are a lot of straight lines in this card. So we have order and we have grief. And so we see a tombstone, a candle, a vase of flowers are being placed, and the around these objects is a kind of glowing light in the darkness. So these are the two energies that are coming together in the next few weeks. And I think it's really important. I see grief has come up, and grief is something that we don't always want to come up, and we don't always want to approach. It's a very difficult state. I won't call it an emotion. I would call it a state. And it contains a whole set of emotions, and some of those emotions can feel wrong in themselves or uncomfortable in themselves. But when grief does come up in a reading, I think it's really, really important when we get cards like this. The reason they're coming up is because they're acknowledging energies that are around us anyway. So it's not that, grief will be around because this card has come up, but more that there is already some grief around. And this card is acknowledging that. And then we have order. So, order can be about how we make sense of things psychically, I'm going to say. So mentally, in the heart, in the soul. And so this can be about sort of our societal order, the way that things work, the way that systems work. It can be about how we create order in our own world. And the word that keeps popping into my head with this is actually ritual, with this order and grief. That actually maybe we need to make sense of any grieving experience that we're going through at the moment with a little bit of ritual. So, maybe lighting a candle, setting flowers, sitting around somewhere I think it's really interesting that the image here is a hearth fire. This is usually representative of the home, of a safe place. So, where does your mind feel most in order? Where do you feel most safe? And perhaps spending some time there to help you to process any grief that's going on. And I'd really like to invite in the idea that we can be going through a process of grief, and we can be experiencing magic and enchantment and re-enchantment at the same time. This can be happening at the same time. So we have order and grief coming together as our kind of themes, really, for the coming weeks, for the month. So I'm going to invite you to sit with how that works for you specifically. And it may be that some of this is about how we process our collective grief as well. There is a lot going on for humans at the moment, and for our planet at the moment. And so perhaps we do need to make sense of that together in a way to be able to function, really. I am heartened by the colours as well, by the fire here, by the hearth, by the flowers, things that are meaningful and comforting even with that as well. I also noticed so that the order card is very kind of pink and orange and red, and the grief card is more kind of blues and yellows. So we've got warm and cool coming together. And it may be for some of us that if we've had these kind of things going on separately in our lives, in whatever parts of our lives they are, it may be as if we've felt kind of torn between one or the other. And with them coming together, with this process of them coming together, that might actually allow a little bit more freedom for something else to come in life. And what might that something else be? So what is the overarching process that's going on, this thing that's so big at the moment that we perhaps can't even see it, but that nonetheless is happening, and that we are in the energy of the experience of. And look at this. This is a beautiful, very watery card. Release. So here we see a great big ocean under a great big full moon with bright stars, and a sort of mermaid figure with her back to us, heading into that water, heading into the depths of that ocean. And I think that's a really lovely card for giving meaning as well to these other, or for kind of helping to make sense of this order and grief that actually release requires us to have experienced that, both of those other things. And I love the freedom in this card. You know, this mermaid, she's returning to her element. So it may be for those of us who have felt a little bit out of our element for a while, that, you know, there is an invitation there to just return to your element and return to the magic. You know, there's something about going into the depths of the sea. And I talked about this, talking about Loch Ness, about bodies of water. You know, there is something unknowable underneath. It's unknowable as in it's intangible perhaps, or unquantifiable, or difficult to express and articulate, and yet we know it anyway. We know the pull of it. So this can be about what's going on unconsciously, and this can be also about sort of what collective unconscious as well. And if you look at this image, it just feels right that she's going into the sea. And maybe we don't know what's underneath, but it's the right thing. So I think there's certainly a calling towards harmony, towards being in right relationship, towards being in depth, in meaning, and to kind of being in touch with that which is a little bit deeper underneath. So the next position then, so it's the lock. What is the space that contains us, and what are we containing? And this is interesting. It's a card that jumped out actually as I was shuffling there, and came up, and it's the throat chakra, but it came up reversed, which I didn't even know there were any cards in this deck which were reversed, but this one was. So you'll see in terms of the colour of this card, you know, it's very blue, which is the colour of the throat chakra. It also aligns with this release, this overarching process of release, in terms of the colours on these cards. It aligns with the grief in terms of the colours on these cards, and it contrasts with that order. And with the throat chakra, that is often all about expression, speaking our truth, listening to others as well. It's not just about our expression, but about how we receive expression from others. And so for this to come up reversed in this position of what contains us and what do we contain, I find really fascinating, because I think there's an invitation here. Now, with the reverse cards, sometimes the invitation is to bring them upright, to achieve a certain amount of balance. And certainly with this being a chakra card, when it's come out reversed, what we have here is what I would say is an imbalance of some kind. And the way to balance the throat chakra often is about expression. So if you have something that you need to say, then here is your invitation to express that. And so it might be about expressing what you are containing, or it might be about expressing, if you think of yourself as the body of water, as the contained, what is that experience like to be contained? And it might feel both safe and restrictive at the same time, or it could feel like one of those, depending on what you feel is containing you at the moment. So I think the invitation here is to explore that expression. Now, if this is a big thing for you, and for some of it is, you don't have to go shouting from the rooftops just yet. It might be about expressing by writing in your journal. It might be about just saying something aloud when you are alone that you've never said aloud before. I know when people come to me for tarot readings, one of the functions of the containing space of the tarot reading is to allow people to express what's on their minds, what's with them at the moment, and what they're working with at the moment. And sometimes that can feel just the act of kind of expressing and giving that container, giving that space of the reading to the issue that they're dealing with, can feel very cathartic. And then of course we go on to work on solutions. So we have an invitation to expression. Now, more than this, because we've had grief come up, if there is a grief that you are holding or that you have been holding, then there may be some expression there. So if it is someone that you have lost, then, one of my favorite ways to get in touch is to write them a letter. Just write them a letter, or, talk to them. But grief can be about lots of things. It may not be about having lost a person. It may be a part of yourself that has been lost, especially if you're having trouble with expression. It may be a more general grief. There could be lots of different kinds of grief. So I appreciate that for everyone watching, this is going to be slightly different. But because it has come up, because we've had grief come up, and because we've had the throat chakra come up, I would say express and be in touch with any grief that you have. Now, and then I'm going to place this on the board upright. So this is a little energetic magic trick that you can do in a reading when a card does come out reversed. If we don't want that energy to be reversed, then we can place it upright, and sometimes just that intentional act can have ripples in the universe. But the other thing with the throat chakra coming up in what is contained, what are you containing and how are you contained, is that it's about the whole idea of what's appropriate to speak, isn't it? So, we are taught from a very young age to be polite, what you can and can't say, what can and can't be said. And so perhaps there's an invitation here as well to a re-examining of that, of what is appropriate. If there's something that you've been taught that you have to contain because you can't send it out into the world, just checking in, is that still true? And for some people it might be, for some people it won't be. But certainly examining those deeper beliefs, those kind of unconscious, internalized beliefs that might be there under the water, is a good way to go. Nessie then, so the spirit of place, or spirits of place, and how might we in the next few weeks interact with spirits of place? And this is I think it's a real invitation for us to begin, continue, or return to this practice of recognizing spirits of place. I think this is why this position has suggested itself to me in this spread. And we have mindfulness, and this really looks like someone who is connecting with spirits of place. So there's a young person in a forest, but holding a pot plant, and the pot plant is kind of lit by a beautiful, like a beam of light that's coming coming in and surrounding it. And there's all that lovely sort of forest green light as well in the card as well. And that's a really perfect card for how do we connect with spirits of place. So it can be as simple as, whether you're in the forest or whether you're in a terraced house in the middle of town, wherever you are, you can connect with spirits of place. And we can do this by cultivating those places, caring for them. So this person may have potted that plant. I've been repotting some plants this morning, and I always have a bit of a conversation with them, give them a bit of Reiki, a bit of nurture, a bit of care, build a relationship with them. And we can do that with the places that we are. So in the places that we are, this is our invitation to be mindful in how we show up. So it can be enough to just be in somewhere and be mindful while we're there. And you can practice this in lots of different places. So I invite you to practice it in your home, because that's a place where you spend a lot of your time, and the other places that you spend a lot of your time. But also find places around you that feel really nice, really good to be in. So there might be a local forest or a park or a river that you want to go and connect with. And to go and spend some time there and just do your mindfulness practice there, breathe for a few minutes. It might be enough. And if you want to, you can practice care for that place. So one of the things I used to do a lot when I was out and about in the places that were sacred to me when I lived on the sacred mountain was I'd take my litter picker out with me. So if I went out walking on the mountain, I'd always have my litter picker and a bag for rubbish, so that I wasn't cleaning the whole mountain, but I was doing just a little bit of care for it. And so that was made the place more pleasant, but also showed care towards the place and helped to be with that place. So that's a really simple way that we can work with spirits of place as well. And then the final position, so it's position of the act of pilgrimage and of offering. So if there's one magical act that we can do in the coming weeks, in the coming month, if there's one act of magic that we can do to re-enchant ourselves, to re-enchant the world that we live in, and to be in right relationship, what is that? And we have an element, it's earth. So this is a card. It's got a lot of brown in it, some yellow and some pink, some symbols there. And it's the element of earth. I think there are some of those symbols are astrological, that are associated with earth as well. So the one magical act that we can do in the coming weeks, in the coming month, to be in right relationship is to encourage or build that relationship with earth. Now, there are so many ways to do this. It can be about that pot plant. It can be about putting our bare feet or the palms of our hands or some parts of ourselves on the earth, whether that's on bare earth or just on the ground in the place where we are. I would like to emphasize that these practices are accessible to everyone in some way, and how they are accessible will look different for every person. If you are someone who has lovely natural spaces available to you nearby, then you might want to spend some time with them. If you have them available to you but not that easily, so that it becomes an act of pilgrimage to go to them, you might find time for that this month as well. You might consciously and deliberately do that as a magical act. You might care for plants. You might care for the place where you are. We've got that invitation this month. And you might care for your body. The element of earth is the element of the material plane. So as well as being about places and the natural world, it can also be about our own bodies and our own health, our relationships with our bodies. So say something nice to yourself about your body this week, this month. Treat your body with kindness and compassion in whatever way works for you. You know, allow yourself to experience being in your body. You know, allow your not quite sure how to phrase this, but allow yourself to place your hands on your body. You know, what does it feel like to give yourself touch with compassion, and that touch which is not requiring anything. You know, it's just you're reminding yourself that you are here. So these are our magical acts. And if you are, I don't think I have a card for it, but I have a Sacred Earth healing course. And I would really recommend actually trying that course if you haven't done it already, or even coming back to it if you have. It is, the sessions are quite long. They're about half an hour long each, but there is a session in that about you and Earth, about how we relate to the Earth and how we relate to our own bodies, and the how we can approach that intentionally and kindly and with compassion.